got to do this or not?
What? Yeah, try and shoot a little bit. You can cut the face off if you want. Just get the hands.
No, we got to get him YouTube famous.
Yeah, YouTube famous. No, not yet.
You got to start somewhere.
All right, first thing we want to talk about, guys, is cam bearing install. We know the cam bearing, when we have a cam in block design, the cam is going to be in the center of the block, okay, whether it's a V6, inline 4-cylinder. So when it's a cam in block design, it's going to be towards the center of your engine, all right? Overhead cam, we know, is in the actual cylinder head itself. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to take you through the process of just installing a cam bearing, all right? Now we've done one in a previous class, so our back bearing is already installed. Before we can install a bearing, obviously you have to remove them. So we do have a tool over here, and this is our installer and remover. So it does the same, does both jobs, okay? So if you guys are going to build one at home, make sure you're using the right tool for the right job. You'll notice with our cam bearing tool that we have a rubber band. Anytime we use this, our cam bearing is going to sit on the rubber portion of it. The rubber is designed so that it doesn't damage the bearing surface itself, okay? So if we take a look at the bearings we have here, we can look at the type of material on the inside of the bearing, okay? Very smooth. It's very, I want to say brittle, but we do need to be very, very careful with it. It scratches very easy. For instance, a piece of sand, just rubbing a piece of sand off of it, or taking your fingernail, rubbing too hard with a fingernail is going to scratch the moly coating right off the bearing.
So sandpaper in that thing would not be a good combination.
Sandpaper in this would be a bad idea. Yep. Dirty oil in this is a bad idea. Okay? The other thing we want to know about bearings is you can expand the bearing, and so you can actually stretch it out too much. So when we're doing this, if we install this and we expand our rubber band out too far, we're actually going to stretch the bearing out, and it's not going to fit properly. Okay? So there's a couple things you want to remember. Bearings are all labeled with numbers, so they have a specific spot in the engine that each bearing has to go. So all the cam bores, all the cam journals in the block are not the same size. So that means this one has a specific location. There's a little map or chart on a cam box. So when you guys buy cam bearings, you're not just buying one, you're buying a whole set. So if you destroy one, guess what? Exactly. You got to buy the whole set. Okay. So if we look on here, this one is CH-4-3. If I look across here, it says CH4, okay, -3, and then it has some numbers after it. So you see the bottom row. Okay. CH4-3. Bottom row, CH4-3, and it says 3 and 4. So that means it's designed, this bearing is designed to go in journal 3 and journal 4. So I have journal 5, it's all the way to the back of the motor. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we were to look in here, look at your cam journals in the block, okay, those boards, we start at the front, we work our way to the back, okay? So I know this is good for 3 and 4, same size. This chart also tells me then, I know that 3 and 4 journal are identical, okay? Because the bearings are identical. You have to start the back of the motor and drive that bearing in first, and then work your way to the front. That's the way it works, okay? Questions? Yeah? Pretty good? Okay. All right, we're gonna start setting our tool up now. Anytime we press in this tool, we want to press it in dry. So we want to make sure that there's no oil, no lubrication on the journal inside the block. We want to make sure there's no oil or any lubrication on the outside of the bearing itself. All right, that's extremely important. If you lubricate this part and you press it in, and this spins when it's not supposed to, it's gonna stay stuck to the cam. Okay, you're not gonna have the lubrication. You're not gonna have oil pressure, which we talked about yesterday, and it's gonna spin in there and it's gonna work its way out of the bore. Okay? Make sure it's nice and dry when this goes in. Okay? So far, so good? Alright, good. Let's go ahead and set up our tool. First thing we want to do, make sure whatever driver we use will get to the back of the block. Okay? This is the part we're going to use with the hammer. Next thing we want to make sure we install our cone facing towards the block. Okay? The cone is going to act as our guide. Next up, we're going to install all this right here. This is our expander and spacer. In the green toolbox full stag, if you would grab us a 7/8 wrench. That's for our adjustment nut on the end. Okay. And then next thing we gotta do is we have to select the proper size bushing. Okay. So let's try it. Three, not quite. It's actually a little too tight. Okay. Just about having that big failure. Now you see how it's kind of small? We're gonna expand it out. Okay. It's the next size down, so we're gonna end up using that one. The shoulder, the steel shoulder, is going to sit against this steel shoulder down here. Just expands on all the way to this bushing. Alright? Make sure it's on good. What we can do is kind of dry fit this, get it close to the size we need. Anytime you're expanding this, you want to make sure that you don't expand it too tight, or again, we're going to stretch out that bearing. Okay? Once the bearing is stretched out, it's too large, it's not going to fit inside the board. Okay? Back it off just a little bit. So it has just a little bit of slip, but it's pretty much still. Okay? The reason we want that is if you expand it too far again, you're oversizing it, it's going to be hard to drive in, we're going to damage the bearing. Two, we want to make sure it's snug enough that the bearing doesn't move around on our driver. If it does, what we're going to do is damage the edge, that lip of it. If we damage the lip of it, we roll the lip to the inside, then our cam is going to get gouged, and we're going to destroy the bearing right away. Okay? Within a few seconds of startup. Okay? If the lip is big enough, even just putting the camshaft in, you're destroying the bearing and the camshaft. Make sense how important that is? Okay. So we want to make sure that our bearing is tight up against our driver here. So far so good? Alright. Let's go ahead and move this hinge. And we're going to loosen this up. Just a little bit. Slide our cam bearing off. Right there for now. We're going to install our driver. Okay. We got it through bore 1, 2, and 3. And we're sitting down here ready to drive our bearing into bore 4. Okay? Now, this is kind of the fun part. You'll notice down inside our journal in the block, there's a groove down in there. I know the camera, you might not be able to pick it up, but if you can see that, if you're actually looking at the block, you'll see that groove in the center of our journal in the block. We got to make sure that this oil hole right here is lined up with that groove in the block. Otherwise, this bearing won't get oil. That part of the cam won't get oil. And then this will heat up. And as it heats up, it'll seize to the cam, and then it'll start to spin in the block. Okay?
Is that how you spin a bearing?
Spin a cam bearing, yes. Yep. That's how metal shavings get in the block, and then that's how main bearings, rod bearings, and all that get destroyed. Okay? You guys can ignore that.
What
we're gonna do?
Good enough to win an award.
No, that's not true.
I see what you're saying.
You guys are all perfect in my book.
Yeah. I'm a perfect little angel.
I don't know about angels. I wouldn't go that far. Okay?
Yeah, your arm's getting there.
Yep.
So once it's down in the block here, okay, once we're down in the block, make sure you got it up against the shoulder. Use our wrench. Hold it still. We're just going to snug it up. We want to make sure, again, see how I'm turning the driver and I'm turning the bearing. Okay? So I got a little bit of resistance on it. That means I'm just tight enough on my bearing surface. I'm going to start the bearing by hand, and this is where my cone comes in back here. Okay? Now here's the trick. Anytime you hit something with a hammer, okay, the object wants to bounce off. So anytime we hit the driver with the hammer, this driver here is going to want to bounce off the bearing itself. And anytime it bounces off the bearing, that's when it's going to start to take the lip of the bearing and roll it inside. Exactly, not good. That means we got to replace it. Okay? Hand me the hammer behind you there, Nick. Yeah. I'm going to slide this back just a little bit. Now the way I find it works best is to grab with 2 fingers our driver here, and then push using your hand against the cone. That keeps everything centered. Alright? When we start, I want to make sure everything's pushed in, and we're going to hit it pretty good to get going. Okay? Then I'm going to readjust, come back down. So I'm grabbing the bar hard, pushing in, and holding in on the cone at the same time. Okay, see your bearing going in? As the bearing goes in, as soon as the bearing gets in, it's going to start going in a lot easier, because what we've done is we've compressed it now. Okay. The idea is to try and hit it as few times as possible. Okay. You can use your cone as a guide, so that as you pull your driver out, you're not damaging anything. Okay? Now I've done something on purpose on this one. Okay. First off, too far. How do you know?
You can see it.
Look on the back side. Okay? See on the back side? If you look down here on the back side, you can see the little lip. Okay? You can also see that there's a large section here. Okay? Or it went in too far. The other thing I did, should have been a lot better, is notice the back one. The oil holes towards the bottom, where I can actually use a flashlight, shine down there, and I can make sure that my oil hole is lined up with my groove. Where's my oil hole on this one? It's on the top. It's hard to see, isn't it? Pain in the butt. So, doing a few things ahead of time, prepping yourself so that as you drive it in, making sure that your oil hole's at the bottom, making sure that you're not going too far, those are the things you want to do. So now what do? How do I correct this?
Pull it back out. Or get a new one.
I gotta get a new one. I have to drive it out. The way I drive it out, I put my tool back in here and I keep hitting it out. Okay? Exactly. So, to install, we install dry, right? And when we install, we want to make sure that we don't go too far, otherwise we've just scrapped that. And we want the oil hole at the bottom so that we know when we're lined up with the groove. Okay? Pretty good?
Yep.
Good.